They remembered the law when gods forgot. Commander Eva Rostova watched the abyss from the command deck of the survey ship Pathfinder. Before her, the Tartarus Nebula bled across the viewport, a smear of nascent starlight and cosmic dust. It was a place of beginnings, yet their instruments screamed of an ending, an impossibly ancient and silent one. The ship's AI Kestrel manifested as a cool blue line of light, pulsing on the central holotank. Its voice was serene, a stark contrast to the anomaly it described. Gravitational readings remain inconsistent with a natural body commander. The object is 300,000 kilometers across its primary axis. Mass is an order of magnitude higher than expected. Lieutenant Commander Eris Thorne, her executive officer, stood rigidly by the tactical display. It's absorbing nearly all active sensor pings. What we're seeing is a ghost, an outline carved from the background radiation. In the heart of that ghost, a single impossibly faint sigil, sometimes resolved from the visual noise, a balanced scale held within an obsidian circle. It was a symbol no one in the Commonwealth archives recognized, yet it felt primordially familiar. The deep-range arrays on the Pathfinder hummed with the strain of listening to something that had not spoken in a million years. The stakes were absolute first contact with a power that predated their star-spanning civilization. Dr. Vance, any progress on the carrier wave Rostova? Asked, her voice steady. From the science station, Dr. Ilara Vance shook her head, her eyes wide with a manic brilliance. It's not a language in any recognizable sense. It's mathematics pure and simple, a repeating sequence of prime numbers but nested within an ethical framework, a sort of logical test. She tapped her console, and a string of elegant alien script flowed across the screen. It's not asking who we are. It's asking what we would judge. A debt is a promise etched in time. The object was a spindle of non-reflective black, a void against the nebula's chaotic beauty. Structures clung to its surface like barnacles, vast and silent. They were hangars that could swallow fleets' sensor arrays, shaped like skeletal cathedrals, and weapon emplacements that were cold and dead. Rostova felt a shiver trace its way down her spine, a primal fear of a sleeping leviathan. It was a warship, a fortress, a tomb. But the signal it bled into the void spoke not of war, but of balance. Kestrel's synthesized voice cut through the quiet awe. Commander, I am detecting multiple high-energy transient signatures. Vector and velocity indicate a non-Commonwealth origin. They are decelerating rapidly. 10 vessels cruiser class or higher. Thorne's jaw tightened. Scrappers, or worse. Shields to full. Charge weapon capacitors, but do not lock targets, Rostova ordered. Her gaze never left the viewport where the silent Titan hung in space. Let's see who else has come to petition the dead. The civilian outpost on Tartarus 4, a small research and refueling station, was now directly in the path of the approaching fleet. They were a complication she could not afford, and one she could not ignore. A vow is the bedrock of honor. The Vulture Fleet, as the scavengers were known, arrived with a savage elegance. Their ships were brutalist designs, scarred and retrofitted with oversized engines and weapons. Their leader, a warlord named Kalen, broadcast on all open channels. His face was a mask of predatory confidence. Commonwealth vessel Pathfinder, this is a salvage claim under the Unclaimed Territories mandate. Power down your systems and prepare to be boarded. Any interference will be met with overwhelming force. Rostova stood, her hands clasped behind her back. Warlord Kalen, this is Commander Rostova of the Commonwealth Survey Corps. This object is a clear candidate for first contact protocols. Your salvage claim is invalid. Withdraw to a safe distance or you will be in violation of interstellar law. She knew the appeal to law was pointless, but it was a necessary formality. Kalen laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Your laws end where my guns begin, Commander. You have 5 minutes to comply. The measure of a soul is its word." Eris Thorne moved to her side. "Commander, our combat capabilities are 30% of theirs. Kestrel's simulations give us a 17% chance of survival in a direct engagement." "And what does it say about their chances of cracking that thing open?" she asked, nodding toward the colossal artifact. Kestrel answered without pause. "Assuming the object's hull is composed of a dense neutronium alloy, as readings suggest, the Vulture fleet could expend their entire ammunition payload without causing more than superficial damage. It is an exercise in futility." "They don't know that," Rostova murmured. "They're arrogant. They see a prize and assume it's theirs for the taking." She turned to Vance. "Doctor, what does your gut tell you, this test you mentioned? What is it looking for?" Vance's eyes were unfocused, lost in the stream of data. "It's not a riddle to be solved. It is a condition to be met. It speaks of ledgers of accounts settled. It wants to see a principle demonstrated. A principle demonstrated in the crucible of choice." The Vultures began their assault not on the Pathfinder, but on the ancient structure. Beams of coherent energy, lances of plasma, and kinetic slugs slammed into the black hull. They vanished without a trace, absorbed into the immense, silent form. There was no flare of shields, no ripple of energy dispersal. The relic simply endured a mountain weathering a storm. It was an act of supreme cosmic indifference. Kalen's frustration mounted with every failed attempt. His ships drew closer, pouring more and more power into their useless attacks. From a cramped habitat module on Tartarus 4, a hydroponics farmer named Lena watched the distant light show with her son. The flashes of weapon fire were like angry fireflies against the nebula's glow. "Are the Commonwealth going to protect us, Mama?" the boy asked, his voice small. Lena hugged him close, the smell of soil and fear clinging to her worn clothes. "The Commonwealth always tries to do what's right, Ben," she whispered, though she wasn't sure she believed it herself. She had seen too many promises broken in the outer territories. Rostova saw her opening. It was a terrible risk, a gamble that went against every tactical doctrine she had ever learned. Kestrel plot a course. Take us between the Vulture fleet and Tartarus 4. Full power to the shields. Broadcast on all channels that we are extending a protection cordon around a civilian installation. Thorne stared at her. "Commander, that's suicide. We'll be placing ourselves directly in their line of fire. They'll see it as a provocation. A just cause is a shield for the weak. It's not a provocation, Aris. It's a statement," Rostova said, her voice ringing with newfound clarity. "The relic isn't responding to brute force. It's watching." Vance said it's a test of judgment. Kalen is showing his judgment by attacking a dormant object and threatening civilians. We will show ours by defending them. She turned to the helm. "Execute." The Pathfinder surged forward, a sliver of silver and blue against the vast darkness. It was a minnow swimming before a school of sharks. Kalen's voice roared over the comms, laced with fury. "You dare interfere, fire on that Commonwealth vessel. Teach them their place." Lasers and plasma bolts, previously wasted on the relic, now converged on the Pathfinder. The ship's shields flared violently, shifting from turquoise to a screaming crimson. The deck plates shuddered and the lights flickered. An energy conduit overloaded on a lower deck. The muffled boom felt more than heard. The air filled with the sharp scent of ozone. Shields at 80%, taking heavy fire on the forward arc. Thorne called out, his knuckles white on his console. "Hold our position," Rostova commanded, her body braced against the vibrations. Vance, is there any change from the artifact? For a moment, there was only the scream of tortured shields and the thunder of impacts. Then Vance's voice hushed with awe. Yes, the energy output. It's not zero anymore. The sigil is glowing. A single righteous act outweighs 1,000 empty prayers. On the main viewport, the symbol of the scales began to shine a soft silver light against the absolute black. It pulsed in time with the Pathfinder's shield impacts. A low, resonant hum vibrated through the hull of their ship, a bass note that seemed to shake the very fabric of space-time. It was a sound of immense and ancient power stirring from a long slumber. The relic was waking up. The energy that had been pouring into the black hull was not simply absorbed. It had been stored, counted, weighed. The attacks from the Vulture fleet suddenly stopped. Kalen's ships drifted, their commanders likely staring in disbelief as the entire 300,000-kilometer spindle began to change. Lines of silver light traced across its surface, connecting the silent weapon emplacements and the cathedral-like sensor arrays. It was no longer a tomb. It was a judgment engine. A new voice spoke not over the comms but directly in their minds. It was calm, resonant, and genderless. It was a voice of pure, implacable logic. A debt has been incurred. A threat has been made against a protected party. The ledger must be balanced. From the tip of the ancient vessel, a beam of impossibly black energy lanced out. It did not explode. It simply touched one of the Vulture cruisers. The ship's shields vanished. Its hull dissolved into component atoms. One moment it was there, a vessel of war and fury. The next it was gone, leaving only a fading trail of ionized particles. The debt of violence is paid in silence. Kalen screamed in rage and confusion. What is this? What have you done? He directed at Rostova. His face contorted on her screen. I've done nothing. Rostova replied, her own heart pounding. You've just met the original owners. The ancient ship spoke again, its mental voice washing over them. You have acted as a shield for the defenseless. You have placed law above advantage. You have presented a valid key. The Obsidian anchorage is now active. State your designation and intent. Rostova found her voice. This is Commander Eva Rostova of the Commonwealth vessel Pathfinder. Our intent is peaceful exploration and the preservation of lawful order. Lawful order, the voice repeated, a sense of ancient approval in its tone. A worthy intent. We shall assist. The anchorage turned its attention back to the Vulture fleet. You are found guilty of unprovoked aggression, piracy, and endangerment of non-combatants. Your sentence will now be carried out. It didn't fire another weapon. Instead, the vast silver-lit arrays on its surface pulsed. A wave of focused gravimetric distortion washed over the Vulture ships. It wasn't destructive. It was precise. It targeted only their drive systems and weapon capacitors. One by one, the scavenger ships went dark and dead in the water, their engines cold, their guns silent. They were helpless, adrift in the shadow of the power they had sought to plunder. A judgment rendered is a lesson taught. Before Rostova could process the silent, elegant victory, Kestrel's voice sliced through the moment. Commander, a second fleet has just translated in-system, triumvirate markings, 15 vessels, heavy fleet configuration. They are hailing us. On the main screen, Kalen's panicked face was replaced by the severe patrician features of a man in a crisp white uniform. His insignia marked him as a proctor of the Triumvirate Adjudicator Corps. He did not look impressed. He looked annoyed. Commonwealth ship Pathfinder. the man said, his voice dripping with condescension. I am Proctor Valerius of the triumvirate vessel Veritas. By the authority of the Outer Systems Accords, this entire sector is now under triumvirate jurisdiction. This artifact is a potential threat to interstellar stability and is hereby seized. Power down your systems and await our instructions. Thorn swore under his breath. From pirates to lawyers. What a day. Rostova met the Proctor's gaze. Proctor, this is a first contact situation with a sentient entity of immense power. By those same accords, jurisdiction falls to the discovering party until a peaceful resolution can be negotiated. Proctor Valerius gave a thin, dismissive smile. An interesting interpretation, Commander. But you will find that the triumvirate's interpretation is the one that matters. The artifact is a weapon, and weapons must be controlled. The tyranny of law is no law at all. The voice of the anchorage returned a cold weight in all their minds. It had been listening. This new entity claims authority. It speaks of law, but its intent is control. It seeks to place a collar on that which must be free. The anchorage then directed a question solely at Rostova. Commander, you acted in defense of another. This Proctor acts in defense of his own power. How do you rule? Rostova was standing at the heart of a maelstrom. On one side, a disabled fleet of pirates. On the other, a fleet of legalists ready to start a war for a prize they didn't understand. And beneath her, a newly awakened ancient power was asking her, a simple survey commander, to be its judge. The weight of 1,000,000 years of silence settled on her shoulders. She looked at the Proctor's arrogant face on the screen, then at the helpless vulture ships, and finally at the small civilian station on Tartarus 4. Kestrel, what is the status of the vulture crews? She asked. Life support is stable on all vessels. They are functionally prisons, but they are alive. She nodded. Her path was becoming clear. Proctor Valerius, she said, her voice now imbued with an authority she didn't know she possessed. You are mistaken. This isn't a weapon to be seized. It's a court, and it is now in session. A mirror shows only what is there. The Proctor's face tightened with fury. Your sentimentality is irrelevant, Commander. You are relieved of your authority. Stand down or you will be fired upon. The triumvirate ships began to advance, their weapon ports sliding open. They were not brash like the vultures. They were methodical, professional, and utterly confident in their right to act. The anchorage remained still, its silver lights pulsing calmly. It was waiting for her verdict. Her choice would determine the first act of this reawakened power. It could be an act of war or an act of law. She looked at Vance, who gave her a slight encouraging nod. She looked at Thorn, whose expression had shifted from caution to a grim, resolute loyalty. Proctor Rostova said, her voice broadcast to all ships in the system. You claim jurisdiction. You claim this artifact as your property. But you have made no attempt to understand it. You have only sought to possess it. She paused, letting the words hang in the silent space between fleets. This entity teaches by numbers and remembers by ledgers. It has never known a caller. That is a correct assessment, the anchorage affirmed in her mind. The first act had to be a lesson, a demonstration, a reflection of the Proctor's own methods turned back upon him. Anchorage, she said, speaking to the silent Titan. The Proctor's fleet uses the law as a weapon. They create legal traps and use overwhelming force to ensure compliance. They value control above all else. I ask you to render a judgment based on their own principles. A perfect trap has no exit. A strange warmth spread from the anchorage, a feeling of ancient, complex calculations resolving. A reasonable request. A judgment based on their own doctrine. The mirror protocol is engaged. Proctor Valerius scoffed. What is this nonsense, Commander? This is your final warning. His ships were now in range. Energy signatures spiked across the triumvirate fleet. They were preparing a coordinated volley designed to disable the Pathfinder and intimidate the anchorage into submission. But they never got the chance to fire. From the Obsidian anchorage, nothing was launched. There were no beams, no missiles, no gravimetric waves. Instead, the space around the triumvirate fleet began to fold. It wasn't a violent act. It was a geometric one, as elegant and precise as origami. Warping space-time, the anchorage created a series of interlocking event horizons, perfect spherical cages of inescapable gravity, each one enclosing a single triumvirate ship. They were trapped, not by a force field, but by the very laws of physics, weaponized with an artistry that was breathtaking. They could still see out. They could still broadcast. But they could not move. They could not fire. Any attempt to do so would simply have the energy of their actions curl back in on them along the curved space-time of their prison. The cage you build for others is the one you will inhabit. Valerius's face was a canvas of disbelief and horror. What have you done? Release us immediately. The anchorage's voice echoed through every mind. You sought to control. You are now controlled. You sought to isolate. You are now isolated. You sought to impose your will through unyielding force. You are now subject to an unyielding reality. This is the Mirror Protocol. You are the sole architects of your confinement. A pause filled with the weight of cosmic time. Reflect on your choices. A new judgment will be rendered when a new understanding is demonstrated. The triumvirate fleet was neutralized without a single shot being fired from the anchorage. Their own aggression, their own methodology had been used to create their perfect, inescapable prison. The anchorage had not acted as a weapon, but as a mirror reflecting the nature of those who approached it. Rostova let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The deck was still the immediate threat gone. The Vulture fleet drifted helplessly. The Triumvirate fleet was caged by physics. The Pathfinder. A tiny survey ship was now the sole arbiter of a power that could reshape the galactic balance. Aris Thorn stared at the tactical display, at the neat rows of contained triumvirate ships. "My God, Eva," he whispered. "What have we woken up?" Justice Rostova said softly, looking at the immense silver-lit form of the obsidian anchorage. "I think we woke up justice. A reckoning is the harvest of deeds." The anchorage then turned its attention to the final party, the Vultures. Their actions were of greed, not doctrine. Their sentence must differ. It must be a tally of their transgressions. Beams of pure data visible as shimmering streams of light shot from the anchorage and enveloped the derelict Vulture ships. It wasn't an attack. It was an audit. On the Pathfinder's comms, they could hear the panicked cries of the Vulture crews. Their ship systems were coming back online, but not under their control. Cargo bay doors were opening, ejecting stolen goods. Encrypted financial ledgers were being decrypted and broadcast on open channels detailing years of piracy and plunder. Navigational computers were being wiped of all data except for one set of coordinates, a return path to the nearest Commonwealth Justice Station. "Your material wealth is forfeit. Return to those you have wronged," the anchorage declared. "Your knowledge of illegal routes is erased. Your debt to civilized space will be paid. You are given the fuel for one journey. Choose your destination wisely." The data streams ceased. The Vulture ships were free to move, but they were neutered, exposed, and impoverished. Their power was gone. 3 verdicts for 3 offenses. Rostova watched as the first of the vulture ships, shamed and broken, slowly turned and began its long sublight journey back toward Commonwealth territory. They had been judged, sentenced, and set on a path of penance without a single life being lost. It was more elegant, more profound, and more terrifying than any weapon she had ever conceived. Kestrel's calm voice provided the summary. Commander, the immediate threats have been neutralized. The anchorage has demonstrated capabilities that are conservatively 5 technological tiers above our own. It appears to have accepted your authority as its primary liaison. It hasn't accepted my authority, Rostova corrected. It has accepted our principles. There's a difference. She knew this was just the beginning. The triumvirate would not take this humiliation lightly. The rest of the Commonwealth would soon learn of what happened here. This quiet corner of the nebula was about to become the most important place in the galaxy. The voice of the anchorage returned its focus now entirely on her and the Pathfinder. The initial balance is restored. The ledger is marked. We must now speak of the future. There are other accounts long overdue. There are precedents that have been forgotten. You will be our voice. We will be your sword and your shield. A covenant is sealed not in ink, but in action. The weight of that statement settled upon her. This was not a simple alliance. It was a mantle of responsibility unlike any other. She was no longer just a commander of a survey ship. She was the chosen interpreter for a living embodiment of ancient human law. Her actions, her words, her judgments would now have consequences on a galactic scale. What do you need us to do? Rostova asked, her voice quiet but firm. The system you call Tartarus is built upon a foundation of broken promises, the anchorage replied. A corporate entity, Westbrook Industries, displaced a native sentient species from the 5th planet a century ago, violating a protectorate treaty. The official record claims the species died out from a plague. This is a falsehood. They were forcibly relocated to the moon of Tartarus 6, which is geologically unstable. Dr. Vance gasped, her hands flying to her console. Tartarus 5 is a corporate-owned world. The displacement was a major scandal, but the official inquiry found no wrongdoing. The evidence was inconclusive. The evidence was suppressed, the anchorage stated flatly. We observed the act. We recorded the injustice. The statute of limitations has not expired. The ledger is open. Silver light flared along the immense hull. We will go there. We will present the evidence. We will demand an accounting. An old truth ignored becomes a new debt. This was the next step. Not a battle, but a trial. A confrontation not with pirates or warships, but with corporate lawyers, doctored histories, and the immense inertia of institutional corruption. It was a far more complex and dangerous fight than the one they had just survived. Taking on Westbrook Industries would mean taking on one of the most powerful conglomerates in the Commonwealth. They won't just roll over, Thorne warned. Westbrook has its own security fleet. They have politicians in their pocket. They will bury us in litigation and lies. They can try, Rostova, said a hard light in her eyes. The doubt she had felt hours ago was gone, burned away, and replaced by a cold, clear purpose. But they don't have a million-year-old witness on their doorstep. She looked at the viewport, at the great silent ship that had chosen her. Set a course for Tartarus 5. Inform the crew to prepare for a legal proceeding. The Pathfinder began to move, taking up a position alongside the obsidian anchorage. The two vessels, one ancient and impossibly powerful, the other modern and resilient, moved as one. They were a strange pair, a court, and its herald, a judge, and its clerk. The caged triumvirate ships and the fleeing vultures were left behind monuments to a new form of power that had just been introduced to the galaxy. The journey was silent. The crew of the Pathfinder worked with a quiet, focused intensity. They had all heard the anchorage's declarations. They knew what was at stake. They were no longer explorers. They were agents of a reckoning. The past is never dead. It is not even past. As they approached the verdant cloud-swirled marble of Tartarus V, Kestrel spoke. "Commander, we are being hailed by Westbrook Industries Security. Their orbital defense platform is active. They are demanding we halt our advance and state our purpose." Rostova stepped forward. On the screen, a stern-faced security chief appeared. "Unidentified vessels, you have entered restricted corporate space. This is a final warning. Reverse course now." Before Rostova could reply, the anchorage acted. It did not power weapons. It simply broadcast a single tight-beam transmission directly to the planet's surface to every public and private comms terminal. The broadcast contained a single image, the original untampered treaty between the Commonwealth and the native species of Tartarus V. It showed the signatures, the dates, and the territorial guarantees. And then came a second file, a star chart showing the forced exodus of the native population to the barren, unstable moon. The anchorage's voice followed the data broadcast for the entire planet to hear. "Westbrook Industries, you are in violation of Treaty 74 Gamma. You have perpetrated a fraud. You have stolen a world. The evidence is now public. The account is due. A lie cannot survive the light of truth." The security chief's face went pale. Alarms began to blare on his bridge. He was no longer dealing with an unidentified ship. He was dealing with a planet-wide insurrection of truth. His authority was evaporating in real time. "Proctor Valerius is requesting a channel," Kestrel announced. "He sounds agitated." Rostova allowed the connection. Valerius's face appeared in a secondary window, his expression livid. His ship was still trapped in its gravitational cage, but his voice was unconstrained. "Commander Rostova, what you are doing is destabilizing an entire sector. Corporate sovereignty is a cornerstone of Commonwealth economic policy. You cannot simply unravel a century of legal precedent on the word of an alien machine." "It is not an alien machine, Proctor. It is a human one. And it remembers things we have chosen to forget," Rostova replied calmly. "As for precedent, it is about to be rewritten." She cut the connection. The first act of the Obsidian anchorage had been a defense. The second was an accusation. The third, she knew, would have to be a resolution. The entire system was now watching, waiting to see what this ancient power would do next. The name of the game had changed from a battle for salvage to a fight for the very soul of the law, and she stood squarely at its center. The scales of justice tip slowly, but they always tip. A corporate security vessel, sleek and predatory, broke from the orbital platform's embrace. It was a flagship, bristling with missile pods and energy cannons, a clear statement of Westbrook's confidence. Its captain, a man with a jawline as rigid as his company's legal boilerplate, appeared on Rostova's screen. "Pathfinder, you are interfering with a registered corporate asset. Cease your illegal broadcasts and surrender your vessel for inspection. Non-compliance will be met with terminal force." Rostova didn't flinch. She felt the calm, immense presence of the anchorage in the back of her mind, a silent partner in this confrontation. "Your asset is a stolen world," she replied, her voice level. "Your authority is a documented fraud. We are not the ones breaking the law here." The security captain smirked. "The law is what the victor writes. Let's see who holds the pen at the end of this." He cut the channel. The flagship began to accelerate, flanked by a squadron of heavy frigates. They moved to box in the smaller, outgunned Pathfinder. A law written in blood is easily erased. They intend to destroy you first, believing us to be a non-sentient weapon under your control, the anchorage communicated to her. They seek to decapitate the operation. This is a predictable but flawed tactical assessment. Can we survive their opening salvos? Eris Thorn asked, his hands flying across the tactical display. Not without significant damage, Kestrel replied, its blue line fluctuating. The probability of a mission-critical failure is 62%. We won't need to, Rostova said. The anchorage doesn't fight. It teaches. She turned her gaze to the viewport. Anchorage demonstrate for them the principle of disarmament. The ancient ship responded. Once again, no weapons fired. Instead, a torrent of data focused with the precision of a scalpel lanced across the void and struck the advancing Westbrook fleet. It was not an attack on their hulls or shields, but on the complex software that governed their ships. It was a logic bomb of incomprehensible elegance. On the bridge of the Westbrook flagship, the captain watched in horror as his targeting systems began to malfunction. Instead of locking onto the Pathfinder, they locked onto each other. His missile guidance systems recursively targeted their own launch tubes. His engine controls flashed with 1,000 simultaneous, contradictory commands threatening to tear his ship apart. Every system he relied on for violence was suddenly cripplingly introspective. The sword that strikes itself can harm no other. The entire Westbrook security fleet floundered. Ships began to drift, their systems locked in a digital feedback loop. They were not damaged, but they were neutered and rendered utterly impotent by an attack that was nothing more than pure weaponized information. It was another lesson delivered with chilling efficiency. With the local military threat neutralized, a new communication request came through. It was from the planet's surface, from the executive spire of Westbrook Industries. A man in a flawlessly tailored suit appeared on the screen. He was handsome, his smile practiced, his eyes cold and empty. Corporate insignia identified him as Marcus Thorne, Executive Vice President. Aris stiffened at the name. Commander Rostova. Marcus began, his voice a smooth, cultured baritone. A rather dramatic entrance. You seem to have caused a great deal of temporary confusion here. I am sure it is all a misunderstanding. Perhaps we can discuss a mutually beneficial arrangement to clear this up. There is no misunderstanding, Mr. Thorne, Rostova said. A world was stolen. A people were condemned. The evidence is now public. Marcus waved a dismissive hand. Evidence can be recontextualized. History is a messy business. What matters is the present. And in the present, Westbrook Industries is a vital part of the Commonwealth's economic stability. What you are doing threatens that stability. Think of the pensions, the jobs, the delicate political balance. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Think of your own future. A survey commander with the discovery of the millennium to her name could write her own ticket. A quiet transfer of the artifact's control codes, a generous grant for your future endeavors. Everyone wins. A bribe is the admission of a guilty hand. Rostova felt a surge of cold fury. He wasn't just a criminal. He was a merchant of apathy, so assured of the power of greed that he couldn't conceive of any other motive. This artifact is not a commodity, and my duty is not for sale, she said. The anchorage has made its demand. An accounting is required. Marcus's smile vanished, replaced by a mask of reptilian coldness. You are making a grave error, Commander. You think you have all the leverage, but you are a single ship far from home. I have already sent a priority dispatch to the Commonwealth High Command. I have framed this as a rogue AI, an unknown xenotech that has subverted a Commonwealth officer and now threatens a peaceful corporate world. A battle fleet is already on its way. They will not be asking questions. The threat was real, plausible. A lone commander seemingly in league with a Jorid machine destabilizing an entire sector. It was the kind of scenario that made admirals jumpy. They would arrive with cannons charged and view her as part of the problem. The cost of her lawful stance had just escalated dramatically. From a dusty, forgotten data archive deep within the corporate spire on Tartarus Fuff, a junior archivist named Kalen. A common name, but the irony was not lost on him. Watched the public data feeds with trembling hands. He had always known something was wrong with the official history of the planet. There were gaps in the record's sealed files that even his clearance couldn't touch. The Anchorage's broadcast was not a revelation. It was a confirmation of a lifetime of suspicion. He looked at the sealed server rack in the corner, the one labeled Project Nightingale. He knew with a sudden, gut-wrenching certainty that the final proof was in there. A conscience is a whisper that can shake an empire. The Anchorage's voice filled Rostova's mind, sharp and urgent. His threat is credible. Commonwealth Fleet Command will respond with overwhelming force to a perceived contagion. Their protocols are rigid. They will seek to sterilize the unknown. Our window for a lawful resolution is closing. We estimate 72 standard hours until their arrival. We need more than the treaty, Rostova said, thinking aloud. We need something that proves intent. Something that will make a fleet admiral pause and question his orders. As if in answer, a new signal reached the Pathfinder. It was weak, heavily encrypted, and sent on a tight beam from the planet's surface. It was a civilian signal routed through a dozen proxies to avoid detection. Kestrel isolated and decrypted it. A nervous, reedy voice spoke. To the commander of the Pathfinder, I believe you. I have the location of the complete unredacted logs of the relocation. They called it Project Nightingale. It's worse than you know. But it's in the primary archive, a physically shielded sub-level vault. I can get you the access path, but I can't get you inside. Hope sharp and dangerous cut through the tension on the bridge. This was their chance. A smoking gun. Aris Ilara. You're with me, Rostova commanded. Prep a shuttle. We're going planetside. Thorne looked at her, then at the fleet of disabled but still dangerous security ships in orbit. Commander, a ground mission is too risky. They will be hunting for us. The truth is a treasure worth the greatest risk. Which is why the Anchorage will provide a distraction, Rostova said, a plan forming in her mind. Mr. Marcus Thorne and his corporation are obsessed with control, with procedure, with their own internal bureaucracy. We will use that against them. She turned her thoughts to the silent giant beside her. Anchorage, I need you to perform an audit. Not of their crimes, but of their operations. Every shipping manifest, every personnel file, every financial transaction for the last 50 years. Can you do it? There was a sense of ancient, dry amusement from the entity. We are a ledger. It is our primary function. We will request a full accounting of Westbrook Industries pursuant to Commonwealth commercial law. Legally, they will be obligated to respond. The gambit was set. As Rostova's shuttle, running silent and cloaked, descended into the upper atmosphere of Tartarus Fifth, the Obsidian Anchorage began its new assault. It sent a single, polite, legally unimpeachable data request to Westbrook's central servers, and then another, and another. Soon it was a flood, a deluge of millions of simultaneous, computationally intensive queries. Every department, from accounting to janitorial services, was suddenly tasked with retrieving and verifying centuries of records. The corporation's digital infrastructure, designed for profit and control, ground to a halt under the sheer weight of its own history. Alarms screamed in server farms. Data analysts clutched their heads as their systems were overwhelmed by an impossible demand for legitimate information. It was the ultimate denial-of-service attack executed not with malicious code, but with the full crushing force of the law. They were being buried alive under their own paperwork. A system built on lies chokes on its own records. Rostova's shuttle landed silently in a maintenance tunnel on the outskirts of the capital city. The air tasted of recycled solvents and metallic dust. Following the archivist's directions, they made their way through deserted service corridors, the distant wail of institutional chaos, a constant reminder of their distraction. They reached the entrance to the primary archive, a massive vault door of polished chrome and hardened steel. The archivist said the internal security would be on a closed network. Vance said, pulling a sophisticated decryption device from her kit. The Anchorage's audit won't be able to touch it directly. She plugged the device into the door's control panel. The scent of hot electronics filled the air as she worked. I can bypass the lock, but it will trigger a silent alarm. We'll have minutes, maybe less. Do it, Rostova ordered. The heavy door hissed open. Inside, rows upon rows of data servers hummed in the cold, sterile air. At the center of the room was a single, isolated plinth. On it rested a black, crystalline data core. Project Nightingale. Thorne stood guard at the door, while Vance carefully interfaced with the core. Her face, illuminated by the glowing data stream, grew pale. Eva. My God, she whispered. It wasn't just a relocation. The plague, they engineered it. A bioagent that was non-lethal, but caused sterility in the native population. They didn't just move them. They condemned them to a slow, quiet extinction. The scale of the crime was breathtaking. It was systematic, cold-blooded genocide planned and executed for profit. A deep, guttural roar from the corridor announced the arrival of corporate security clad in black armor. A crime revealed demands a verdict. Time to go, Thorne yelled, laying down covering fire with his pulse rifle. The corridor lit up with streaks of plasma. Rostova grabbed the data core from Vance, the weight of it feeling like a tombstone in her hands. One of the security guards got a lucky shot off. A bolt of superheated energy clipped Thorne's shoulder, spinning him around. He grunted in pain, his arm going limp, the smell of seared armor and flesh, sharp and sickening. They retreated back to the shuttle, Thorne leaning heavily on Rostova. The cost of their victory was now etched into his flesh. As they lifted off, a message from Kestrel flashed on the shuttle's console. Commander, the Commonwealth Fleet has arrived in system. Battle Group Athena. 12 capital ships. They are hailing us and demanding our immediate surrender. They had the proof, but they were out of time. Battle Group Athena arrived ready for war. They were a wall of gunmetal gray, sleek and efficient, the very embodiment of Commonwealth military might. Their commander, Admiral Jorik Quinn, was a man whose face seemed carved from granite. His image appeared on the Pathfinder's main view screen. Commander Rostova, he began, his voice a low rumble of authority. You are relieved of command. You will power down all systems and prepare to be boarded. Your pet anomaly will stand down, or it will be neutralized. This is not a negotiation. Rostova stood on her bridge, her uniform stained with grime from the ground mission, Thorne being treated by a medical drone at his station. She held the data core from Project Nightingale in her hand. Admiral Quinn, she said, meeting his hard gaze. Before you open fire, you have a duty to review evidence pertaining to a Class A violation of the Protectorate Treaty. A crime of genocide. Quinn's eyes narrowed. I have my orders, Commander. We are here to contain a technological threat, not to preside over a provincial legal dispute. A duty to obey is not a duty to be blind. This is not a dispute. It is a mass murder, Rostova countered. And the witness is the anomaly you're preparing to fire on. She looked at Vance. Broadcast it. Everything. To the entire battle group. The data stream went out. The original treaty, the suppressed logs, and now the unredacted files of Project Nightingale. The cold corporate memos detailing the development and deployment of a sterilization plague. The raw, unassailable proof of the crime. For a long, silent minute, the only sound on the Pathfinder's bridge was the hum of the life support systems. The space between the two fleets crackled with tension. Admiral Quinn's stony expression began to crack. He was a soldier, but he was a soldier of the Commonwealth, an institution founded on principles of law and mutual defense. Firing on the only witness to a genocide would make him an accessory after the fact. His orders were to contain a threat, but the data showed the real threat was the corporation he had been sent to protect. The Admiral is calculating the anchorage's voice noted in Rostova's mind. He is weighing his orders against his conscience. His ledger is in flux. Finally, Quinn spoke, his voice strained. This data, if it is authentic, it is, Rostova said. The obsidian anchorage does not lie. It only remembers. A truth acknowledged cannot be unseen. Before the Admiral could decide, Marcus Thorne, his face a mask of desperate fury, made his move. From the surface of Tartarus Fuff, a massive shielded projectile launched from a hidden silo. It wasn't a conventional weapon. It was a gravitic driver, a planet killer, a weapon of last resort, illegal under every treaty. It was aimed not at the Commonwealth fleet, but at the unstable moon of Tartarus 6, the very place the surviving natives had been exiled. If I am to be ruined, Marcus's voice screamed over an open channel, then I will wipe the board clean. There will be no one left to pay reparations to. It was an act of pure nihilistic spite, a final murderous tantrum. The projectile was too fast, its trajectory too perfect for the Commonwealth fleet to intercept in time. In minutes, it would shatter the moon and extinguish the last survivors of the species Westbrook had wronged. But the obsidian anchorage had been waiting. It had been counting. It had been balancing. The final debt has been presented. It stated, its mental voice as cold as the void. The account will now be closed. The anchorage moved. For the first time, it showed a fraction of its true capability. Space-time warped around it, and the 300,000-kilometer vessel translated across millions of kilometers in an instant. It appeared directly in the path of the gravitic weapon. The projectile, a weapon capable of shattering a world, slammed into the black hull and vanished. It was not destroyed. It was not deflected. It was accepted, stored, added to the ledger. The debt of hatred is the heaviest of all. Then the anchorage acted. From its spindle-like form, it extended a single, impossibly thin filament of captured space-time. The filament reached across the system, not toward Marcus Thorne's location, but toward the gravitic prisons still holding the triumvirate fleet. With surgical precision, it opened a microscopic one-way wormhole inside the bridge of Proctor Valerius's flagship, the Veritas. Through this aperture, the anchorage deposited a single object, the now inert gravitic weapon, rendered harmless, but still radiating the energies of its intended purpose. The anchorage's voice spoke to every ship, every mind, from Admiral Quinn to the lowest-rated crewman. This was an act of illegal warfare, a violation of the Ares Conventions. We cede this evidence and this judgment to the recognized legal authority in this sector. It was a masterstroke. It had neutralized the threat, preserved the evidence, and handed the jurisdiction for the newest crime over to the triumvirate, forcing them to act as lawful adjudicators rather than claimants. It had honored their authority while simultaneously trapping them within it. Proctor Valerius, faced with an illegal superweapon, literally delivered to his doorstep, had no choice. His voice, strained with reluctant duty, crackled over the comms. By the authority of the Triumvirate, I find Westbrook Industries in violation of the Ares Conventions. Their corporate charter is hereby suspended. Their assets are frozen. A warrant is issued for the arrest of Marcus Thorne and his board of directors. A law ignored becomes a chain. On Tartarus 5th, what was left of Westbrook's authority imploded. Faced with warrants from both the Commonwealth and the Triumvirate, their security forces laid down their arms. Marcus Thorne was taken into custody, his empire collapsing around him. The anchorage did not need to act as a weapon. It had simply illuminated the truth, and the existing structures of law, however flawed, were forced to grind toward their proper conclusion. Admiral Quinn, his face etched with a newfound respect, opened a channel to Rostova. "Commander, you have conducted yourself with honor under impossible circumstances." He paused. "The Commonwealth owes you and your associate a debt of gratitude. Battle Group Athena will stand down. We will remain in system to enforce the warrants and oversee the initial relief efforts for the survivors on Tartarus 6. The immediate crisis was over. The cost had been high. Thorne's injury was healing, but would leave a scar, and the Pathfinder's energy margins were dangerously low after the strain of the mission. But they had won, not through violence but through a stubborn adherence to principle. In the days that followed, the full ramifications became clear. Westbrook Industries was dismantled. Its assets were seized, and a massive trust was established for the restoration of the native species and their homeworld. The anchorage precedent became a subject of frantic debate in every legal court in the galaxy. The ancient ship was declared a special historical adjudicator, a unique entity with a protected status. Its stewardship was officially and publicly granted to Commander Eva Rostova and the crew of the CNS Pathfinder. They were no longer explorers. They were guardians of a living law. On the bridge of the Pathfinder, the constant low hum of the ship's systems was now harmonized with a deeper, more resonant thrum from the anchorage. On the main holotank next to the cool blue line of Kestrel, a new symbol now hovered, a silver, perfectly balanced scale, glowing with a soft, steady, eternal light. It was the icon of their new duty, a permanent link to the ancient power that had chosen them. This was not a weapon we found. It was a memory, a conscience. For so long we had looked to the stars, for new life, for new resources, for new frontiers to conquer. We never thought to look for the old rules. We had forgotten the promises we had broken along the way. The anchorage doesn't seek vengeance or power. It only seeks balance. It remembers every debt, weighs every action, and presents the bill not in fire but in truth. It is not our master. It is our mirror, and it has chosen us to help a forgetful galaxy remember how to read its own reflection. The ledger is open, and the count has just begun.